and trash can conversion. I shared some information to all the commissioners that the 300 are going to 96 gallon. There's a calendar of when those changes and when that conversion is happening. I've seen some emails already from residents who are having specific questions about their property, or neighbors who are not putting cans where they belong at the time that they should be going there or going back from that location. So I'll forward some information from Division of Refuse that gives a few more tips and reminders, so you can feel free to send those out, or at least you have some of that information to answer to residents who might be asking you about that. And lastly, we had what we call the Northside Pride Center team meeting, and the city attorney this morning shared some progress on Jack's Corner Pub. So thank you already to our commissioners who had attended that initial hearing and shared some of the information. Basically reiterated that same thing. There's a for sale sign. So the only stipulation, the only condition is that that property does not get used as a bar. And so far, there's been compliance, and the next hearing, I believe, is scheduled for October the 16th, if anyone is interested in that. And unfortunately, our zone attorney, Chris Clark, could not be here, but if there are any questions from commissioners, I will be very happy to relay feedback to him and get answers for you as quickly as possible.
And so October 16th for that?
October 16th. Yes, and anything that is a link or contact information, I'll provide for you, Commissioner.
So I want to do questions a little differently today, since we only have two of you here.
Okay.
So I wanted to go ahead and actually just do questions for SWID now, and then we'll move on to the next presenter, if that's okay. So Eric, go for it.
Thank you, Chief. For the benefit of our guests, could you kind of go over the situation with Jack's as far as it stands today?
Sure. Thanks for trusting me to do that. And I will say, hi, everyone. So I'm the neighborhood liaison from the city of Columbus. I am what they call the front door to all of our departments. So everything on the administration side, any of the approximately 15 departments that we have, and every, okay, thank you. So every part of the city has their own liaison. I serve the north side, which includes here in the university area. We had last month at the area commission meeting a motion put forward to express the community's support for revoking the liquor license at Jack's Corner Pub. It was a very emotional meeting. We heard from survivors of violence, our victim's family, for a young man whose life was ended due to gun violence outside of Jack's Corner Pub. There were a lot of other issues. I feel that's probably a good summary, related to the service of alcohol and violence resulting from that service of alcohol at that location. So the commissioners heard that community voice. There were a number of community members here to express support for the motion to take away that license or do whatever we could to make a more positive business opportunity at that location. That motion was approved unanimously and passed, and then sent along then to urge that support from the community. Is there anything you'd like to add, Commissioner?
I'm just curious, there was a hearing that you said, and what was
Yes.
determined at that hearing? That's what
I'm sorry, good, thank you for the prompt. So an investigation then took place following the death of Nasir Reed. And police, code enforcement, city attorney worked together to gather all the evidence to put forward that investigation. And at the hearing, they haven't had to take the step to revoke the license, but they're no longer able to operate. And the owner of the pub currently has agreed to that stipulation that they will stay closed until that next hearing on October 16th. And again, it was the urging that that property be used for something other than the sale of alcohol. It does not become a bar. And I believe the owner heard that and put up a for sale sign. And I believe some of the other feedback that came out of the hearing was they're possibly in talks with a neighboring business for that business to then expand into the property.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Tim?
More mundane, but on the interim expenditure, with zoning notifications, it's a little bit hard to predict if there might be extra postage and material monies needed, and that's a quick turnaround time, like basically 36 hours. to get that out.
Sure.
So can we work on a reimbursement basis and then contact you? Can I work on a reimbursement basis and then contact you?
Good question. I may take that back to our team just to ask how they'd like that to work, and I'm sure that's not exclusive to this area commission. And it may be best if we sort of budget for that, then they can make the purchase for you in advance, so you have more than,
It's a quick turnaround time on those notifications, and we don't know exactly until the requests come in, and then with the associated addresses, I can't predict the
sure.
volume.
Okay. I will take that to our fiscal team and find out how they would like to handle it
Thank you.
and have an answer for you hopefully before the end of this week.
Kevin, you had a question?
Yeah, I had a question about Jack's liquor license. So if he sells it, or if it's sold to someone who doesn't use it as a bar, does the process to revoke the license still go through? Does the owner still maintain ownership of the license? Can it be used elsewhere? What's the process with the license, assuming he sells before the hearing, or the hearing doesn't go forward because he sells?
Yes, I will take that to Chris Clark to answer for you. The way that it was explained this morning, just to give you what I understood to be the terms, is that no, it will not, well, that it's still a tool that they have, is to revoke that license. And if needed, they will do that. So not before the next hearing, and that would be determined potentially at that next hearing. But I'll have Chris write us something so you have a full answer for that.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, if there are any expenditures that are forwarded to you, I would like to know about them, being treasurer, so if you could let me know, or if, better yet, commissioners would let me know, that'd be great.
Understood. Let's teamwork and
Yeah,
make this
yeah.
request. You copy me, I'll copy you. so
That's
we-
right, absolutely.
Perfect, thank you.
To reiterate a little bit what some others have asked about Jack's Pub, is the revoking of the liquor license going to go with the property and not with the owner? Because that's what's critical here. If it's gonna go to, what's happened in the past at Jack's Pub is they slide it over to a relative or a cousin, and then it just operates again as it always had. The key here is to take away the liquor license to the structure, so that if ever it does become a club, it has to come before us for a variance, and we can sit there and say yea or nay. And I just want to make sure that with the liquor license objection, it removes the liquor license for the structure permanently until they come before us, asking, the new business, they have to get permission. I think that's critical. I don't know if that is legal to do, I just want to, that's what it should be looked at very closely. The other thing I have a concern with, and Nick was talking about, because I was too busy to answer your question online. Did you look at all into some of the homeless issues that were brought up last time by the community? Is what are the things we can do to look at the tent population that's popping up all over the place in Old North Columbus, especially in Planet Ravine, Club Park. I think there's some other places that you mentioned. Portal Park.
Yes. We had a meeting today, the neighborhood liaison team, with our director, and very similar issues happening all across the city. And that is essentially the overall demand from all neighborhoods are, what is the city's plan and what can we do? So I've asked for something solid, some information to come back to the area commissions that gives the tools of, this is our process. These are the tools at the disposal of residents, area commissions, to take some action steps, just so we know what's available. My caution is that right now it's gonna be very unsatisfactory, that there is not a specific overall overarching plan from the city to address the issue of homelessness. Housing simply does not exist yet, and the team is doing the process that they have.
Do we have a number of housing structures for those who are homeless? The city can provide people outside the big shelters, but under Mayor Coleman, they took a lot of the abandoned houses and revamped them, and they're there's plenty of housing available for the homeless, and that seems to have gone away with this mayor. I'd like to get some numbers, physical numbers from the city. How many beds are out there versus how many homeless population we have inside the city. Now, I know some homes don't want to be inside at all. You know, some people just want to be off the grid. But I would still like to know the hard numbers.
Sure. Thank you.
This one.
Yes, two issues. Is there any new information on the illegal use of the parking lot by Midway behind their facility? Because they came to us with requesting a permit and they pulled the request, but they went ahead for the first week of classes and still used it under that original intent. And then the other is I heard, and I don't know much information about it, but I heard that there was a non-compliant illegal conversion of the area behind Rambling House on, is that Summit? Hudson.
Hudson and Cane Alley.
I think you're referring to the patio.
Patio.
Yeah, it was never approved.
Okay, so I think we'll move on now. Swid, we would like, I don't have the new zone attorney's information, but we would like to extend an invite to him. I know Chastity would come to our meetings on a regular basis, and it would be great to extend that same invitation to him. If you could do that for us. But that, I'm sure that would be helpful to catch us up, because we haven't heard from the zone initiative in quite a while from the attorney's office.
Okay. Thank you, Commissioner.
Thank you. And then I'm gonna maybe make an error, but I'm gonna take things out of order a little bit and ask Rochelle to come up first. I know Doreen mentioned last time that you were always last, so I'm gonna make sure you're not last.
Well, hi, everyone. So Rochelle Tell from Off Campus and Community Student Engagement. As you can imagine, we've been pretty busy with all the students back in the area, and so we have quite a few updates for you. We are continuing to grow our staff team, and so currently we are in the hiring process for an off-campus community partner senior representative. So that is a staff member that will work directly with our property owners for our off-campus housing network program. So hopefully next month I'll have some exciting news to share with you who that new team member is. With Off-Campus Housing Network, we are back completing our safety inspections along with city code enforcement. We found that those have been extremely helpful, as we're finding a lot of non-working smoke detectors, as well as some other concerns. That's kind of been the most prevalent thing. So we are working to get those addressed and also continue to educate our students about checking those smoke detectors to ensure that they're working on a regular basis. We also have a community food truck this Friday, so we welcome everyone to join us. That will be from 4 to 6 p.m. and that's going to be on the Wexner Plaza, so right on High Street in 15th. We also are partnering with Coca-Cola as part of their throwback tour, so there'll be some Coke floats there also. We also have a community cleanup this Sunday, the 24th at 10 a.m. That cleanup is in partnership with USG and Sorority and Fraternity Life. So last year we were getting about 200 volunteers, and so we hope to have similar numbers to really make a positive impact in the off-campus area. We also are hosting roommate fairs, so we have a few of those coming up, one on September 26th and one on October 18th. So these are opportunities for students to meet other students who are looking for roommates. We've also been conducting off-campus housing presentations, so working with our second-year transformational experience groups and all of our second-year students to provide educational presentations to help students be knowledgeable about the different steps as they're looking for off-campus housing. And we've reached almost 100 attendees already within less than a month for those presentations. We also are gearing up for our Off-Campus Living Expo that will be on October 17th in the Ohio Union. That expo will have opportunities for property owners that are in the network to share available units that they have, but also safety resources. We have lots of different partners and community members, as well as on-campus resources to share with students different opportunities for them to promote their own safety. And then speaking of safety, we've been really busy distributing safety devices. And so since the 1st of July, we have distributed almost 5,000 safety devices to our students. Thank you.
Thanks. Does anybody, and Rochelle, we're doing questions a little differently today, so if anybody has any questions for Rochelle, Tom.
I'd just like to reiterate, as I did last year, this time last year, that you and the fellow commissioner here, that the Buckeye Block Watch program continued to expand, provide more and more funding for them, because they're the best deterrent that the students, I think, have, not just on campus, but all the neighborhoods. And I would like to see that program expand further what they have right now, additional vehicles, better training, first aid, things like that. I just want to reiterate that if you have the chance to go back to some meetings to really push for the Buckeye Block Watch to receive a lot more funding than they are right now, because they do a pretty good job. It seems with the shifts that they're on, there is a lot less crime. It's usually when their shift ends is when the crime increases. So the other thing I'd like to see is the expansion is beyond 3 a.m. to take that all the way to about 10 a.m. So I've said it elsewhere. I just wanted to say it here officially, since you're here, President, and you're against some other people, can probably take that back to the meetings too.
Any questions?
I do that one. Could you explain the safety devices a little bit more?
Yeah, so our office distributes free safety devices for any Ohio State student. We distribute window and door alarms, smart plugs, so that way students can, plug lights in and set timers on their phone for their lights to turn on. And then we also have a personal safety device. So it's a small device that if you pull on it, emits a really high pitched noise. So all of those are free for students. They can stop in and get it and get those for and they can get as many different kinds that they would like.
Thank you.
Rochelle, could you go over the community cleanup, the date again? And do you have any idea where they're going to be working?
Yeah, so they are on September 24th, starting at 10 a.m. And I'm unsure of the location. I can find out and send that to Jeremy to share out.
Thank you. That's this Sunday.
Yes.
Thank you, Rochelle, I appreciate it.
Thank you.
And certainly, last but not least, we have several officers from the Division of Police. If you'd like to come up and Officer Houndstein would typically do, just a general report of what's going on in the area. However you'd like to spend your time, if you wouldn't mind introducing yourself.
Dr. Kraft puts a recorder
Yes,
up here as
yeah.
I come on.
You were the first one.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Greg Vodker, Assistant Chief of Police. It's a privilege to be with you here tonight. I told Seth you're one of the few commissions that I have not attended. I'm always happy to come. If there's specific information that you're interested in, I have the good fortune of supervising all patrol officers and all detectives. And so I have a lot of information. I have a lot of statistics. Some of them I can immediately recall, many I cannot. But I'm happy to dig into any questions that you have if I don't know the answer. I wanted to take a few minutes tonight just to first introduce my teammates that are here with me, starting with probably the most important person, Officer John Brown. John, can you talk a little bit about your
I'm the community liaison for 3 Precinct, which is just north of you guys. I do, however, have a portion of your commission area on my precinct. So it's the area, Lane, all the way up to Acadia. That's on me. So the Forward Park and all that is on me.
I want to say I really appreciate the info that you send out on a regular basis. You send that to the commissioners.
Yes, sir. I send that to your commission as well as the commission on Clintonville area.
We love that. We love to see that from Houndstein too. I don't think we get that for his area. I don't know if it's a different, if you're generating that report or.
So that report is for all of zone.
Oh, it
4.
covers it all, okay.
So you have 17 precinct and 3 precinct, and you have 4 precinct.
Okay,
That way you guys can compare.
yeah, no,
Who's
yeah,
doing what, what's going on with it.
yeah, it's awesome, love it.
Thank you.
John actually falls under a different chain of command, but I'm really thankful that he's here tonight. Two officers that are within my chain of command, Lieutenant Shannon Deerwester. Could you share a little bit about your
Yes, I was in
responsibility?
for second shift lieutenant. We set a revamped here a few months ago, so got the photo to do soons. And it encompasses everything, basically half of downtown, to the short north, Italian Village, University District, Clintonville, up to the northwest section of the city. Graduated from the Ohio State University. I grew up in Columbus, this neighborhood means a lot to me. I'm happy to be here. I've been in this job a few months now, still kind of getting my feet wet, but appreciate all you guys being here. It means a lot. More information we have, more information we can share, we're doing the same team, better it is for everybody. So I'm big on that. So if you have any questions, let me know.
And what shift do you cover?
Second shift, which is 2P to 10P. Here, pretty much every day.
So he has counterparts on first and third shift, so 24-hour coverage. And then Commander Chris.
Sorry, I also covered the new joint project. I guess we'll probably get to it later. The OSU Crime Interdiction Project, which started in the fall. We've had a lot of early success. I think that's something we're looking at expanding here moving forward, at least in the fall semester and hopefully in the spring semester as well. So there's been a lot of success from that first 4 weeks so far. So a lot of good people working it. Happy with the way it's going so far.
Thank you, LT. Commander
I'm
Nemchev.
Christine Nemchev, I'm the commander of Zone 4. Like Lieutenant Deerwester said, that's pretty much everything from Tuttle up through the short north, all the way through. I've been here about 1.5 years, maybe a little bit longer. I supervise all 3 shifts. I work closely with OSU and the Short North Alliance, and I work with crime analysts to study all the crime, identify the issues, target the crime. So everything ultimately falls on me, and happy to work with you guys.
Thank you. When I take a look at crime throughout the city of Columbus, I look at it through that lens, the entire city. So I share that often with communities that I speak with, but I'm happy to tailor any responses to your specific community. Before I leave, I'll leave a stack of my business cards. They have my name, email, and cell phone number. Many people have said, don't put your cell phone number on there. Many commissioners have told me that. I do that anyway because you can call, you can text, you can email, whatever is comfortable for you. If I'm not available, I will get back to you as soon as I am available. And I'm always happy to work with Dr. Kraft, and if anybody needs any information about the division, I'm happy to provide that as well. I just wanted to review a few of the projects, and when I say a few, very few of the projects that we are undertaking within the division throughout this year, primarily in 2023 and moving into the future. Some of which you may have heard of, some you may have no idea that we're doing them. And this is just a small slice of the pie, so to speak. So you may have seen some information about a dialogue program. This started out like some of the projects that we do, and other law enforcement professionals from around the country looked and snickered and said, that's never going to work. Our dialogue officers are officers that you will see at First Amendment protests. They wear, they jokingly call them the Amazon vests. They are light blue penny vests that they put on over their uniforms. And that signifies that they are there specifically to facilitate peaceful First Amendment process. We admittledly stole this from the United Kingdom. So on the heels of 2020, Ohio State University, John Glenn College did a study of our response to 2020. And within that study, I say this a lot, and I realize how many people in the room did or didn't read the study, because in the study, they referenced a team called the Dialogue Team in Sweden. And so we thought, that's kind of interesting. We reached out to the Department of Justice in early 21, and we said, is there an expert in the world that you consider in dialogue? They pointed us to a professor at Keele University in the United Kingdom named Clifford Stott. Dr. Stott received a cold call from us and asked for his help. We asked for his help. We said, can you help us get better at our responses to crowds? He jumped in with both feet. At the time, he was engaged with Seattle PD. We reached out to Seattle, to our contacts in Seattle, and we joined Seattle and Phoenix Police Department. Since then, Seattle has kind of dropped off, Phoenix has dropped off. We are the only agency in the country engaged in dialogue, a dialogue program. This week, we have 40 dialogue officers that are training. We train quarterly on how to facilitate peaceful First Amendment process. They've been involved in about 100 call-outs, ranging from the drag queen show in Clintonville to Blood Tribe on the west side of Columbus. And basically, the philosophy is that honest dialogue requires honest intent. They identify groups that are going to come into Columbus to facilitate, to protest peacefully. And they reach out to those groups and they act as liaisons and say, how can we help you peacefully protest? It's been very rewarding. We were able to bring Dr. Stott from the UK here for phase one. Phase one was essentially most of August and part of September. He teamed up with John Glenn School and built a bridge there. We hope that phase two will bring him back for a year to be a visiting distinguished professor at Ohio State, and he will train law enforcement in Central Ohio to begin with, and then around the country as the next step. So that's a really little bit on dialogue. You've seen our Operation Unities around the city. Operation Unity is essentially us reaching out to other law enforcement and social service partners, and we believe that each operation has a different mission. So for instance, we had a recent Operation Unity on the south end, southeast side, where our community partners identified some very violent people engaged in drug sales. Working with our law enforcement partners and community partners, we identified those people and we removed them from the streets. The community was thankful for that. And then we had wraparound services from Care Coalition, Columbus Public Health to say, what can we do in your community to help this not happen again? We work a lot with City Attorney's Office. Nuisance Abatement Group is always involved in our Operation Unities. When we identify problem areas, nuisance businesses, houses, apartments, to help us either get them on board or help them stop doing business in Columbus, one of the two. Operation Moonlight, you may have just seen some recent media on Moonlight. Moonlight is an operation that we run on Fridays, Saturdays, and Sunday evenings. It involves officers that is additional duties to the normal duties. Last year primarily, and last year was the first year we did it, they primarily patrolled parks and neighborhood events. This year we expanded it into festivals, sporting events, and we normally end that at the end of September. We're going to extend that through the end of the year because we have seen what's been happening around the country in regards to high school sporting events. The last thing we want in Columbus is for violence to occur, someone to be shot at a high school sporting event. And so Friday nights, starting at the beginning of the season, we have officers at high school sporting events. We meet regularly with Columbus City School security team, and they inform us, hey, these are the areas, these are the games that we're concerned about, and we have officers at those games. Safe Streets is a project, an operation that we run every summer that primarily consists of officers on bicycles. They are in the neighborhoods, different hours. We have 6 different patrol zones, and the patrol commanders, like Commander Nemchev, identify what they want the project on their zone to be. And those projects range from community service to enforcement action. That is that broad of a range. They operate in May, June, July, and August, and part of September.
Thank you.
And Safe Streets will come to an end at the end of September. That is an additional funding source that comes to an end at the end of September. You may have seen last Sunday we had a youth summit at Columbus Commons downtown. We are very, very concerned as an agency about youth violence. I don't know that you can turn on the television without seeing something about youth violence. Just locally, we had a shooting and a robbery, carjacking occur at 7th and High, committed by a 14, 15, and 16-year-old. Between the three, they had 27 felony arrests over the last 3 years. Unacceptable. But the question is, how do we help those families and those children? How do we get them out of that cycle of violence? In the spring, we met with a group of parents called Parents of Kia Boys and Kia Girls. They have their own social support group on Facebook, and so we reached out to them and said, can we meet? We want to hear from you, parents. How can we help you navigate challenging systems sometimes? We also invited the juvenile judges to come to that. It was at Linden Rec Center. And so the juvenile judges came. Many parents, there were about 200 people there. And the parents spoke. They were very frank. And it was a moving meeting. Our officers in the Linden area maintain great contact with many of the families whose children are either missing on a regular basis, they are committing robberies or car thefts, and they are trying to navigate the social service network to get families help. I hear a lot of people blame parents, by the way, and so just something I think we all know in this room, but we heard many of the moms in that room say, look, I have to work 2 jobs to put food on the table for my children, to put a roof over our head. I thought my 14 or 15-year-old could be responsible. And so how do we help those? I don't think locking up those children for the rest of their lives is the answer. But how do we help those? How do we help those children get out of that rut? Youth Summit. I said we work with Nuisance Abatement Group, Zach Klein and Steve Dunbar, to identify problem properties and businesses and take civil court action against those entities if they don't make the changes that make their communities or their businesses safer. You mentioned Jack's, so you know very well about that. We have a domestic violence pilot. You may not know about that. At the beginning of the year, we began a pilot with Children's Hospital Center for Family Safety and Healing. And we said, hey, our 2 highest precincts in the city with domestic violence are the Hilltop, which is 19 precinct on the west side, and 13 precinct, which is the south end. We'd like to work with you to provide an advocate to respond with second shift officers to provide solutions in the moment for victims of domestic violence. That's been very, very successful, but due to the fact that Children's only has 2 advocates, and they're really working hard to hire more, but it's hard to hire social workers who are going to work at 3 a.m. on a Friday night. And so they have 2 advocates that respond with our officers on second shift, which is 2P to 10P or 3P to 11P. Very successful so far. I'll be updated on that in the next few months, and we will try to figure out ways to help them expand that project. That's the domestic violence pilot. And in case you didn't know this, in April of this year, the domestic violence law changed, which added strangulation as a felony. And so prior to April of this year, strangulation, in order to be a felony, had to have a loss of consciousness. That changed in April of this year. We knew very well that that would flood our domestic violence unit, which has about 8 detectives and a sergeant. We knew that that would exponentially increase the numbers of cases that they did. Bless you. And so their first proposal to me was, hey, we need to add 18 detectives. That's not doable. And so I challenged that leadership team to come back with another solution. They probably weren't very happy about it, but they did a great job. and they created what was called the Strangulation Team Operations for Prosecution. It's the STOP team. And what the STOP team is patrol officers who are trained to conduct felony investigations on domestic violence. And so they supplement our domestic violence detectives. To date, those detectives and officers have seen about a 600% increase in domestic violence cases since April. So they've had about 500 felony cases for domestic violence strangulation in this calendar year. That's a little about domestic violence. Project Taillight, again, something that we worked with Zach Klein's office to come up with, something that's not real widely known, but we had to find a grant for it, and we thought, hey, wouldn't it be great if patrol officers, instead of issuing a citation that might be $100 or $200 for an equipment violation, could provide a driver with a card that gave them options of places to go to have that equipment violation repaired for free. We started this in 2022 and we quickly ran out of funding. And we only had one place that would help us with that. That was Columbus Community College. Their auto tech shop said, hey, we'll help you with it. The students can fix the cars. After about 6 months, we were out of money. And so we had to find another grant, and we started that earlier this year. And so there are times when officers will be able to pass out a flyer that says, hey, I stopped you because you have a headlight out. I'm not going to give you a $100 ticket. Here are some options. Call this phone number. They can schedule a time for you to come in and have your car repaired. I think the highest chargeback to the city has been like $1,300 because there were a lot of equipment violations that someone needed fixed. And they got them fixed. So that's a great thing. And then finally, I'll end on this. Recently did an interview on a cold case with the Lantern, with Monty. And it's a 50-year-old cold case from Ohio State University that I'm very, very hopeful we will be solving in the near future. Starting on Monday, we're the first agency in Ohio to hire an investigative genetic genealogist. And so what she will do is she will work with our lab and other labs around the country to extract forensic evidence from evidence that was collected at various crime scenes in years past. And she will build the family trees of our suspects. And she successfully did that for Kelly Foster, who was kidnapped, raped, and murdered from High Street in 1982. We solved that case in 2020. And we're fortunate enough to bring this person on board now. And we hope to have a lot more success with that. So I will tell you that I was very involved from the 9th, moving forward with Ms. Foster's case. And to the extent I'm able to talk about it, there is a suspect who's in custody. But I'm happy to talk about it. I figured this group might have some questions about that.
So we are running a little over on our schedule for this. I want to make sure we give the appropriate time to this matter. So let's be concise with questions, ask questions, don't provide statements.
You should give that to me because I'm probably less concise than
But let's keep it to questions and not just testimony or however. Does anybody have questions? Yes.
You know I don't.
Yes, I
do. But if anyone else has questions before me, I'll be more than happy to wait for my questions.
I just have one. Emily Foster was murdered on Saturday. It was a Buckeye game day, and nobody was notified. So what is the notification process?
Tell me, what do you mean by notified?
If there's a killer on the loose, we probably should know about it. I mean, it's not something like we were all disturbed by Jax, but we knew that it was an altercation between two people, and we kind of knew who those people were. Whereas this was an old lady who was in her home, and it was on a game day with students circulating. And I think Jeremy answered for me that OSU doesn't give text updates. So is there any way to alert the community with maybe a text message or some sort of alert so that if this brutal killer is out, we can at least lock the doors or the windows?
Yeah, well, I can share you that homicide investigations are usually not the cleanest and the quickest. And the first person that's seen, by the way, at that scene was a sergeant who was working overtime directing traffic at Lane and High. And I can share with you that we were trying to piece together a lot of things as well. We normally use social media, whether it's Twitter or whether it's Instagram or whether it's Facebook. We normally use that. On that particular day, we were communicating quite a bit with Ohio State University. I was a little surprised that there was not something that went out from the university. But I will say, and that's easy to say in hindsight. In the moment, we had a lot of questions, and we had some misinformation early as well. Although I am an advocate of sharing information when it comes to homicides and homicide scenes, I think early on we have to be extraordinarily careful what we're sharing and how we're sharing it. And I will say this about that case. Unfortunately, there are details of that case that we will never be able to release. I was confident on the 9th that the community was safe.
Thank you, that's helpful.
Real quick, Thomas, is it being investigated as a home invasion?
It's being investigated as a murder.
Well, I meant, I guess I'm just saying, as far as you know, the suspect has entered Emily Foster's home.
He did.
The crime occurred.
That's correct.
Home invasion type. Yeah,
Yeah, he did. He probably followed her.
that's what I'm asking.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
There was no forced entry.
Yes,
Yeah.
she probably trusted him.
Well, I don't know if she
No, we
trusted
don't.
him, but he probably followed her.
Thanks.
I definitely want probably a little bit more information about the case with Emily. There were a lot of failures that day. There was a failure of PSA that came out to us that gave us wrong information. But I understand, it was an early investigation, but it was said that maybe she had passed away not recently, and that suddenly made things go away when in fact it was an ongoing, very fluid situation that where this person could have gone into another house and done the exact same thing. I'd like to know more about other crimes this gentleman had committed beforehand and during and after, all the way down to Georgia. I mean, we hear about a couple of pieces, but this person, from early on, the first communication I had from a police officer is that this person is extremely dangerous. And as Katie says, why wasn't a better PSA put out by the police department, sent out to all the news agencies and say, we don't know who this person is exactly, but this is the description we have up to this point. And then certainly Ohio State really failed. I mean, and the reason they failed is because they got the wrong information because of the timing. They too thought, well, it might have been a death from a couple of days beforehand. So that's my guess. And they decided it wasn't something that students need to know about. But in reality, it's a game day. We have plenty of police officers. They're all concentrated pretty much on High Street towards the game site. This is a continuing problem we have in our communities on game day. There are no police officers out in the community, in the neighborhoods. If you just had normal patrols going through on game day, maybe something like this might have been prevented. So, these are all failures that we need to, we relaxed a bit since the pandemic. I think we need to refocus and try to get back online with how we used to do things 5-10 years ago. I also like to see an update about the crimes that are happening against students that are happening around here. They seem to be a lot more violent than in the past, and some of them are involving roving teenagers and vehicles, and it's not just happening here, it's happening throughout the city, I understand this. But here, we are a city, it's inside the city. There's so many students who are just so vulnerable. I'd just like to have a look up the data and two recommendations I'd like to make, because these are things that used to happen, and they aren't happening anymore. All of Old North Columbus has a cruiser. It's called Cruiser 34. Now, it doesn't always want to be Cruiser 34 because the car keeps breaking down, so I kind of keep seeing all these different weird numbers. But it used to sit inside Old North Columbus all shifts to look out for crime, to be as a deterrent. And it has not happened since Kimberly Jacobs left. I see it all the time up at Clipville. What's it doing up there? There's hardly any crimes up there. You know, I see Cruiser 30 and 32 and 33 sitting up in Plintonville or on the other side of the freeway, looking and trying to be a turn. But Cruiser 34 is always absent between Lane Avenue and towards Coastal Patrol up to about Tulsa. And it would be nice to just, I mean, I'll give one exception. Officer Brian Wilson does use it in the neighborhood when he can, when he is chasing something down. But he's the only officer I know who actually sits in the neighborhood. So when we do make a call, wherever the officer is sitting, it takes 10 minutes to 15 minutes to get here because they're not sitting in the neighborhood. I like that to finally change back to the way it used to be. The other thing that I like.
Tom, I'm sorry, can we, remember?
I got one little last
But
recommendation.
this is testimony, this isn't a question.
Oh,
So what I asked was that we keep it to questions and not just, you know.
we're also a recommending body.
I know,
We're a
so,
recommending
and I
body.
have no problem with you making recommendations and asking them for more information, but if you wouldn't mind maybe stepping out for a minute after we're
Yeah.
done with this part.
The only other comment I have for is, and I put this before our commission and I put it before other officers. I think we're way overdue for maybe the police chief to finally come and introduce himself to the commission. Police chiefs in the past have always come before the commission, at least to introduce themselves once. We haven't seen that yet. So maybe you have the ability to make that recommendation on.
Sure. Yep. And I'll share that there's one of each of us. So we each do try to get around to different parts of the city and talk. But I'll talk to Chief Brian about that. If I can I'll try to address, I'll try to be succinct here. Although Ms. Foster would disagree with me, I would call the 9th a success. We have very few homicide investigations that are concluded at the end of 4 days. We were able to successfully identify, track, and arrest that individual in just over 4 days. We sealed a lot of the information because we do have a prosecution upcoming that I suspect, even in Franklin County, will be a capital murder trial. And so I need to be really cautious about what I talk about, not to mention Dr. Kraft is going to write what I say. And so I think I need to be really cautious about what I share. In the end, I'm happy to come back after we have obtained a conviction and talk about that a little bit more, if the family is good with that. And so that's really important to me, to recognize the family and try to do what they want us to do. As quickly as 8 hours after we filed those murder charges on that individual, we were meeting with groups at Ohio State to share that we had identified someone and they were in custody. Was that out on social media? No, it was not out on social media. We knew where that person was. We were confident we had evidence. You may have seen an interview I did about a different crime, but when we have physical witness evidence, physical evidence tying someone to a crime, I feel pretty good about the crime. Witness evidence is the weakest evidence that we have in any crime. But when we have physical forensic evidence identifying someone and putting them at the location of the crime, that helps. Ohio State crime, we do work closely with Ohio State Public Safety and Police. Commander Nemchev is working on expanded joint patrols and crime interdiction. And so we do work closely with them on that. I can tell you that statistically, and I just shared this with Ohio State last week, going back a year to today, same period last year, crime is about 40% lower in the off-campus area and the campus area than it was a little over a year ago. And we're happy to provide those stats to you. I'll leave my contact information to you. And finally, districts, you talked about cruiser districts. So when you talk about Cruiser 34, what you're speaking to is cruiser districts. And so those are about a decade ago, probably a decade or so ago, when you worked on a precinct, that precinct was divided into cruiser districts. And if you saw Car 34, it was assigned to a specific geographical area. Earlier this year, we undertook a really large, we ended a really large project We undertook it about a year ago when we started looking at calls for service, minutes busy, because the city has changed significantly since 2010, which was the last time we changed districts in the city. During that time, at the end of April, we added a 6th patrol zone, which largely encompasses North and South Linden. We had to do that without adding people. So what we did was looked at geographic areas in the city, how busy they were, and we tried to readjust the boundaries of those precincts and zones and move cars around. Phase 2 of that same project, we are in the midst of right now, and that is reintroducing cruiser districts. And so cruiser districts, we believe, is the foundation for community policing. And so let's say 3 precinct where you have a car 30, 31, 32, 33, 34. Each one of those cruisers and officers will have a geographic area that they are responsible for. And so my hope is that eventually when we have, when we are adequately staffed, that officers will have time to sit in a place and respond when they're called. Right now, when you call for a car 34, the officer in that cruiser is probably not sitting anywhere. He's probably on a different call for service. And so he's probably responding to your call for service from a different call for service. Something I always like to remind people that you may or may not know. I tell this story because it's a true story and it happened about 2 years ago. Young officer, 2 years on the department, was directing traffic on the far east side of Columbus. A car pulled up. He was directing traffic because there was a car crash there. A car pulled up, put the car in park. Person got out of the car, carried a baby over to the officer, handed the officer the baby. The officer was like, "This is odd. What's going on?" The baby was not alive. Person got back in their car and left. The officer was left holding a child, a 2-year veteran, to do CPR on this baby, call for a medic, deal with the people involved in a car crash. And what do you think happened to that officer after the baby was put into a medic and transported to the hospital? What do you think happened to the officer? He got back in his cruiser and went to the next call for service. And so that is the life of a police officer that's on duty. Our officers more now than ever, and I've been with Columbus Division of Police since '94. Now more than ever, our officers are putting their hands on people to save lives. We're equipped with Narcan, an officer on the Hilltop, which is very active in opiates, has saved 88 lives using Narcan. That was moving to see 7 of those people whose lives he saved come to an award ceremony for him and say, "Hey, I wouldn't be here if you hadn't administered Narcan." They're doing CPR, they're applying tourniquets. They are encountering extreme violence more times than I've ever seen in my career. I'll leave you with this. Juvenile violence. We talked about juvenile violence. As we stand here today, 114 murders in the city of Columbus. Our homicide detectives have solved 92.3 of those cases, 92.3% of those cases. And of those victims and suspects, 40% of them are under 21 years of age. That's a lot. So we've got to do something. It's not just a police issue. It's not just a parent issue. It's not just a school issue. It's not just a church. This is a community issue. How do we help our young people move forward peacefully? So, happy to come back if you'd like for me to ever.
Yeah, I think Seth, you have one quick
actual
question.
Yeah, I just want to say I was a little skeptical when the new police chief came into town. I don't know why. I was supporting the police, but I will have to say with the to make it personal to our area, we had a horrible motorcycle gang congregating by the rallies here on Hudson.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the police said, "Hey, we're working on it. We're working on it." Yeah, it's like, yes. But man, you guys swooped down. I think what you impounded numerous.
We seized over 100 ATVs and motorcycles.
Yeah.
Operation Burnout, that's our Operation
exactly.
Burnout. It's a really dangerous thing to have an MBA, and when you're planning those events and you look at how costly they are, And then I realized sometimes it costs money to solve crime. A little south of you in the short north, the demand was that we pursue those ATVs, and we're not going to chase ATVs.
Right.
My biggest fear is someone on an ATV goes onto the sidewalk at a high speed and runs over people. We are not going to initiate that. That's not going to happen. But we're fortunate. We have helicopters. And so in those instances, the way we dealt with that was we had very large operations last year and some of this year that involved our helicopters. And so the helicopters would simply follow them in the air until they either ran out of gas or they pulled over to fill up or they wrecked. And then we took them into custody. 80% of those people were armed. So.
Yeah, I just think you really thought outside the box. You took a little bit of time, but it's, that situation is pretty much non-existent now there, where I thought it would never go away. And, I think the way you and the police chief are thinking, commanders, I really appreciate it.
That's a partnership, though. That was nuisance abatement, reaching out to the mall there, to the stores, and saying, if you continue to allow this, we will bring a nuisance action against your business. And it was the community members providing us with videotape and photographs of people, us putting that on social media. We had an overwhelming response from people saying that's Bill or that's Mary, whoever that is, and then we would go out and make contact with them. And yes, that was me riding, or no, it wasn't. Sometimes you could say, stop doing it, and they would. Sometimes you could say, stop doing it, and they'd get on the ATV and take off. So.
And lastly, Commissioner McDevitt came up with a list of issues we have. I think the whole city does, but ones we have. If maybe Officer Hallenstein could get with you guys. Yeah, like the drag racing and on Fourth. And
I think I may have already gotten an email.
Awesome.
But I'm happy to give you my information you can share with me.
Wonderful, and he's been doing an awesome job communicating, and I thought that he gave really good updates about Emily Foster, so I appreciate that very much. And
We
I
talked a
shared
lot.
them on social, so thank
I
you.
know a lot of people were reaching out to him and he felt the pressure.
Well,
So-
he responded really well, in my opinion, so thank you.
yeah, I think both he and John Brown, and along with Brian Wilson, and Vince Miller, if you could give a shout out to all four of them.
Absolutely.
Thank you very much. I appreciate your help.
Could Chief take a question from a resident of the community?
Yes.
Is it true that the suspect in the Emily Foster case was in custody and made bail, and within 15 hours was in Emily Foster's kitchen with a knife in his hand? Why was he released?
That's true. We talked about that at a press conference last week. He was in Franklin County Jail on Friday night. He was released, I can't remember the exact time, 6:30-ish. He was released. He had served time he had served 5 years in prison. And then he was charged with 2 first-degree felonies for felonious assault. In that incident, he rammed a Franklin County Sheriff cruiser. They responded to a domestic violence call where he was violating a protection order. He rammed an officer who was injured. He was charged with felonious assault in that case. When he finished his, I might get this exact timeline wrong. When he finished his penitentiary sentence, he went back to the Franklin County Jail to be tried on the first-degree felony case. When he went back, he pled guilty, and he was released on bond pending sentencing. So he was released Friday night at about 6 or 6:30, and on Saturday afternoon, he was in this area committing another violent crime. When he left Columbus, he went west and he stole cars. He went south to just south of Atlanta, where he committed another home invasion. And that home invasion, the homeowner shot him, and he's in the hospital.
Is it fair to ask why he was released or why he was allowed to make bail?
Yeah, that's fair. I would
That's
ask
the way
the
it
judge
works.
that. Yeah, that's fair. I think that's a fair question, right? I think that's a fair question. His bail was $10,000.
It was what?
$10,000 And I don't know exactly what he had to put up to get out, but it was not $10,000. It was probably $1,000.
So we should be asking the prosecutor's office about that same question.
The prosecutor's office requests bail, but they don't make the bail. The judge
Or the judge
determines what the bail will be. And so, we do see, I mean, we look at bails every week. And, in our county, there are some violent criminals that get out on little to no bail.
Thank you.
Every day.
Thank you.
Thank you again for coming, I
My
appreciate
pleasure.
it. And I appreciate everyone's patience as we extended the time of this section. But
Sorry.
No, it's fine. I want to just express your thanks for coming and sharing all of that information and just mention, the importance of having them here to answer questions and be here to support the commission. So I appreciate that. That being said, though, we are going to move on to committee reports. With zoning, we have one zoning case tonight, Seth, that we'd like to.
Yeah. Step up to then we have Jeff Martola with us for a 1980 North Ninth Street. It's for the removal of an ATM, which is currently inside. You go in a door with late night access. It's become a nuisance. People sleeping in there, trying to pry at the ATM and such. So they want to move it out and put it on the outside of the exterior of the building. The variance, this forefront panel adjacent to the new ATM is currently and needs to remain opaque as it fronts into the ATM room. Visibility would be an issue. This necessitates less than the required 60% window transparency at the storefront, prompting the request for a variance. So, if you have some packets and,
I did. I don't know that I have a whole lot to add to that. That summarized it pretty well. It's an existing business, an existing configuration with the vestibule, and I think all they're looking to do is convert the ATM from an enclosed vestibule space. It becomes a hazard later in the evening, and still giving patrons and users the opportunity to withdraw money, just doing it on the frontage as a viable option. And the existing condition has the two transparent, translucent glazing panels, and one that's blacked out because it's a counting area, security issue. Actually, both of them, the two of them, that's the back end of the existing ATM. So the change that we're proposing doesn't really change any of the translucency of the entire elevation. And the new panel will just be retrofitted right into the existing glazing system. It's a thermally controlled insulated panel that has a vinyl facing on it, has the ATM mechanism and a light source above, so there's no internal illumination. And that's pretty much what they're looking to do.
okay. We had up to 7 minutes. You still got some time. You're good. Okay, the zoning committee report was, we heard the case and unanimously approved it. Seemed like a safety no-brainer and a minimal reduction in glass. So this time, is there any public comment here on this case? Appears no. Commission discussion. We'll start with Eric.
No, but at the zoning committee, you clarified that the Chick Harley bass relief, the football player above it, is not going to be touched. It's a treasure. Not at all. In the area down below.
Right?
Nothing.
Nothing.
No questions.
Yeah, it's very clear cut.
No questions.
Nothing.
All right, do we see a need to go around again?
Oh, no, maybe.
Wasted 7 minutes.
Yeah. We need to have a really efficient meeting. It's been done before. So we wouldn't know what to do leaving early. Okay, with that said,
Oh, the question?
I make a motion.
Already did.
Well, we already did.
Oh, yeah.
So we just get to move on
We have two
to,
commissioners.
So,
No, we have to vote.
you get to, respond. Any response? Oh, I'm sorry.
We have two commissioners out of the room before we.
Yeah, well, they should be out of the room. I mean, yeah, we saw, Tom will be out there until midnight. I think the assistant to the chief is gonna regret giving. But,
It's a little.
yeah, are we ready to vote?
no, he needs to
Do
respond.
you have any response to any, I mean, typically you answer questions, but I don't think there were.
Yeah, is there anything you'd like to ask?
No, I mean, one little side of the requirement is 60% translucent glazing and the provided amount is 55, so.
Okay, usually commissioners have questions that no one did, so. Yeah. Okay, so with that, Vicky, vote?
Jeremy Dyer. Eric East.
Yes.
Jeremy Davis.
Yes.
Jeff Gallagher is not in attendance. Justin Garland is not in attendance. Seth Golding.
Yes.
Pasquale Negrata.
Yes.
David Hagley.
Yes.
Zeta Jenkins. Mike Pellmeyer.
Yes.
Amy McFadden, yes. Benjamin McKinley is not in attendance. Demetrius Moore Saunders.
Yes.
Kevin Pangrace.
Yes.
Lewan Sellers is not in attendance. Tim Sublett.
Yes.
Dorian Yohass Sauer is not in attendance. Steve Waldron.
Yes.
Tom Wildman is out of the room. Brian Williams.
Yes.
The motion passes with all votes yes. I guess it's unanimous if people are out of the room.
Yes.
Okay, then it's unanimous. It passes.
Great, thank you all very much, appreciate your time.
I will send the city. Yeah. Hey, Jeff, I'll send the city, our yes vote tomorrow.
Great, thank you very much.
They will be aware.
Anyone is welcome to pull down the back of the
You're going back.
I don't really have any use for it either, so.
Do you have to go ahead and read these together? You don't have to go anywhere else. I'm just saying something.
Thank you.
Thank you. Seth, do you have anything else from the zoning committee?
No, we, the plasma bank down on, down by, McMillan, they're on hold. And yeah, things are a little slow right now. I'm sure they'll pick back up.
Did Hamlet withdraw his, did the guy in Hamlet, did he withdraw his request?
Yeah, remember he tabled it.
Yeah.
Yeah, two carriage houses on Hamlet, they tabled. I have a feeling he probably will, but he may, who knows? Decision is his, I guess.
Okay, thank you. I think we're ready to move on to governance committee report.
Yeah, so governance this month, we had some discussions on our website design, so Matt Hanson dedicated some funding for us to utilize for that. So we talked about doing something to support the onboarding of new commissioners, packaging up our bylaws, election rules, putting all the information that's pertinent to a commissioner on the website, as well as talking about the zoning process and a way for us to search under emails again from our website. The other topic that we had, we did talk about if we can create some rules for developers around affordable housing units. Talked about the university overlay and possibly even developing a subdivision to kind of use some of the ideas that were discussed around affordable housing. So, more to come on all of that. those were the highlights.
Thank you. Planning?
So planning and development this month focused on infrastructural safety. We talked about kind of the big goals that we would hope to see, some things that we would hope to see changes. We reviewed the solutions map and talked about how we are organizing our approach to improving safety at this time. That'll be a continued and ongoing conversation, probably forever. And the solutions map has nearly 3,000 views at this time. So that's the map organized with different layers for the districts, for things that the community suggests that we improve upon, as well as potentially new layers for observed sites for trash and dumping, and then potentially one for camps for the unhoused, just so we have a sense of where they are. So that we can potentially send services and trash cleanups to those areas to ensure that we kind of have a geographical understanding of the dynamics of our community. Secondly, the trash mob, we kind of met, Eric East and I, as a subcommittee. We talked, so October 8th is going to be the University Area Commission's trash mob. Each of the 4 university area districts will be holding a trash cleanup of their own. We'll get supplies from Keep Columbus Beautiful and kind of bring them from where they are to kind of share with all of the commissioners. And so on October 8th in the morning, Eric and I will probably kind of roll around the city, give supplies out at 9. The trash cleanups will start at 10, the last 2 hours. Supplies will be provided, and we request that people kind of partner with residents that they know can have that leadership role to kind of help out. I know that Hudson is going to be split up between Silver Drive to Indianola and District 1, and then District 2 will be Hudson from Indianola to like High Street. But District 4, Demetrius has volunteered to kind of host everybody in Wyland Park. And then District 3, thank you, Steve. And then District 4, Steve's gonna kind of help spearhead trash collection there. And I just reached out to some people today. So that is still in development, but October 8th, 10 to 12, mark your calendars. Get your trash pickers out. It's going to be super fun. So we're excited to clean up the district and do some before and after photos.
Thank you. Community relations, Michael?
Sure. Didn't have a meeting this month because of my shoulder, but I did go ahead and meet with Juliana from the
Neighborhood Design.
Thank you, Neighborhood Design Center. And we talked about the website. Speaking of the website, she has the first draft ready. I looked at it, looks great. There are some changes that need to be made before we present that to the committee. We're going to present it to the committee October 11th at our next meeting at the Community Relations Committee meeting. Invite everybody to come and look at the new website because you're all going to be involved in it. It's a very, I think they solve a lot of issues and they're going to make it work for us. But it's going to require some work from individual, people inputting information on the website to make it work. For instance, there's a lot more zoning information that's going to be on there. So I'm hoping Seth might be able to come, although he's not here at the moment. But so if you want to see get a peek at the new website and offer your what you think about it, that would be great. If you would come October 11th, National Coming Out Day, at 6 o'clock here. And I would hope all the committee members will be there to offer their advice and what they think about it.
Is that meeting solely about the website?
We might have a couple other things on the agenda, but Juliana's going to be there to present it, and it's probably going to be just about the website. Yes.
It's at 6, you said?
6 o'clock, yes.
You said it's here, I'm sorry.
Yes, here, yep. The second Wednesday of the month at 6.
So I just want to echo your request that anybody who's interested in providing feedback come to that committee meeting, because in order for us to be effective as a commission, I think we need to take care of
Yes.
as much business as possible in the committee.
Yes.
So when she might come, or when we present the website to the full commission, is not the opportunity to provide
No.
feedback about the functionality of the website. It's at the committee meeting.
Yes, you're exactly right. And there is a lot more functionality about this new website that you're going to want to see, because you're going to have to live with it, particularly zoning.
I do believe it's going to be more user-friendly for
Definitely.
public visiting the site, though. It's
Definitely.
It's a different approach, but it'll also mean some differences for how we post things.
Yes, it's a lot nicer. It's a lot prettier, easier to navigate. It's going to be great.
Awesome. Thank you. Were there any other questions or comments? Okay. For Board of Elections, we did meet and verified all of the seats up for election. I'll go through those really quickly for everyone. In District 1, there is one 3-year term, which is currently held by Jillian. So you will have to run for election should you choose to keep your seat. In District 2, we have one 3-year term and one 2-year term. Those seats are currently held by the seat that is expiring because of the 3-year term expiration is Seth Golding's. And then Eric East, you were temporarily appointed, so your seat is the 2-year. But like I mentioned to you previously, it's Seth is still out there. Whoever gets the most votes gets the 3-year term. It's not just directly related to your. So if you want to make Seth a lame duck, you could potentially beat him if you get more votes than he does.
All right.
In District 3, we have 2 seats up for election. There's the one 3-year term that's expiring, which is currently held by Brian Williams. And then the other one is held by you, Demetrius. So if you want to stay on the commission past January, you'll need to run. I did send the packet out to all of the commissioners that are up for re-election. And I don't know, Brian, not to put you on the spot, but I don't want to announce it for you. But if you'd like to mention anything now, you could.
Yeah, it's been a good run. This will be when I leave, it will have been 8 years, and I'm glad I did it. But I'm looking forward to seeing maybe somebody younger jumping in my place.
You look great for your age, stay, come on.
So obviously Brian will be with us through January, but me asking him to announce that was not to put you on the spot, but to say to those of us here that know anybody in District 3, we will have an open seat. It won't, it could be contested, but we will have an open seat. So I would encourage you, Demetrius and Luan, to seek your neighbors and Brian to make some recommendations for folks that might be interested. If anybody knows anyone else in District 3, again, that goes from 16th Avenue down to 5th Avenue from High Street to the railroad track. So it covers a wide swath of the University District, and we've had students run to fill seats before. So, hey, Lantern folks, if you know anybody that lives in that area that would be interested in running, please reach out. The commission website is updated with the packet and information. It's the first tab at universityarea.org. Has all of the information you need to know how to run and submit that information.
I'd also like to mention on District 3, I'm on Chittenden, which is like right on the cusp of Wyman Park and the area to the north. And I love Wyman Park, but in my 8 years on, I think all of our representatives in District 3 have been from Wyman Park. And I think, I'd like to do a little bit of outreach into the area to the north as well.
Thank you. And so so everybody knows, the election is November 4th, Saturday, November 4th, 2023, from 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. It will be here. That it's typically a Saturday that's not a home game, which is November 4th is not a home game. I will be soliciting volunteers to cover, 2 volunteers each to cover 2 hours swath of time. If you're up for election, you cannot volunteer to work the election. So we'll have to rely on other commissioners. Oh, I didn't go to District 4, sorry. And last but certainly not least, Tim Sublett, his seat is up for re-election to the 1 3-year term that is ending in this January. And if you are not planning to run, that is no problem. We understand there is life outside of the commission. It's a volunteer organization. We understand that it takes a lot of effort and time away. So please do not hesitate to tell me if you aren't running, because we would like to take the opportunity to solicit others and let others know that that there would be an open seat. I always feel kind of awkward, asking for candidates when we have candidates in the seat, but there's nothing that should stop us from doing that either. In any case, the election is, like I mentioned, November 4th, and the next Board of Elections meeting will be, I believe it's August 5th. August 6th. October 6th at 5:30, sorry.
And then Jeremy, you said the
October 4th,
election is November 4th from 10 to 12?
10 to 4.
10 to 4, that's very different. Thank you.
In this room will be the ballot.
We've set up outside, and depending on the weather, it'll be in the lobby.
Here, right here.
Yeah.
Just the one location?
Entrance could
Just
be
the
off-
one location.
Entrance could be off the high street.
We'll have to verify with Nora what she'll be able to keep unlocked for us. It's convenient for pedestrians to come in off High Street. If you're driving here to vote, it's more convenient for it to be downstairs. I don't particularly care one way or the other. If we can get them both unlocked and be in the lobby, I'm fine with that. Any other questions about the board? Sorry, and just to clarify, it's October 4th. I was looking at September and August. And also
October 4th at 5:30 p.m.
I think we can move on to district concerns, and if we can finish the rest of the agenda in 2 minutes, my agenda will be accurate. So if nobody has any district concerns, or approval of minutes, no, I'm just joking. We should do this. So
I just want to address one thing. 311 on behalf of some of my neighbors. There's aggressive panhandling happening at Portal Park again, to the point they're blocking traffic and stopping cars. Put in the 311, actually a neighbor sent a picture of one gentleman in particular who parks his wheelchair and then gets up and goes up to cars and leaves in cars. She got a picture of it. 311 that Officer Brown actually himself went down, sent me a personal text message and said, I'm going down to deal with this, and that gentleman has not been in the road being aggressive for the past week or 2. So somebody put the fear of the Lord.
He just mentioned that, yeah.
Yeah, that was really cool to see that Officer Brown actually reached out to me directly, because I put my name on the 311. And the pictures help. Putting the picture up, I think, is what really put that one, because you literally could see the man's wheelchair parked in the street, and he was standing up, leaning in the driver's door.
Yeah, he pulled in front of my wife.
Yeah.
Jillian, I think you did.
Obnoxious, it was really obnoxious.
Yes. So brand new update, I just wanted to talk
Sure.
to, what was his, Bodker, to ask about, crime and traffic violence prevention through built environmental design. That is something that the police department is doing. He is actually very supportive of lowering speed limits and redesigning some of the roads, making them two-way and putting in more traffic calming. And that's actually something they have already made, like they've already suggested near the Wedgwood apartment complex. So for anybody who is interested in that, it seems like the Columbus Police might be an organization that would be very supportive of pushing the city to do more.
Time.
No.
Katie?
I'm gonna try to be super fast. Emily Foster, questions about why wasn't the community notified, drag racing on Summit and Fourth, and also Indianola. Brawls are happening outside of the Casablanca hookah bar on Duncan after the bar closed. It's open till 4 a.m. As many of the hookah bars are, and they're very close to bars, so people leave the bars, they go to the hookah bars. It's been observed that people are holding guns up in the air over their heads. They are heavily armed and they're fighting, physically fighting. As the Lido staff is leaving the bar and the restaurant, they feel that they're in danger, so they're pretty concerned about that. There's police officers that act as security at Lido's. They are not intervening to de-escalate the situation. A police officer drove by one of the brawls and it helped disperse the brawl, but it's definitely something prevalent and repeated. Then there's a lot of concern right now about the bike lanes on Summit, and there's all this Columbia Gas work being done. And so the Columbia Gas work is putting stress on the bike lanes and putting a lot of debris into the bike lanes. And in the next couple of weeks, there's gonna be something called the Bike Bus. And it's essentially a community organization of parents that bicycle with children to get them to school and organize the group. And what they're worried about is that the debris and the state of the bike lanes isn't gonna make it safe enough for them to be able to ride their bikes to school. So we're requesting SWID that we can get some help on that. Trash, broken glass, flat, and gravel, specifically in the bike lanes. We're requesting updates on the Indianola road diet and the lanes planned from Hudson on Indianola through North Broadway. We heard 2024, but haven't heard back. 2 different residents suggested a crosswalk with flashing lights in front of Dominion Middle School on Arcadia. It's pretty dangerous, and there's a lot of middle schoolers related to that. Portal Park, as Eric observed, has been a big issue as far as not only drug use in Portal Park, but behind Lucky's. I personally went behind Lucky's. They bulldozed the camp there, but there's still needle debris. I have photos of it. And so that is a block away. It's on the same block as the school. Let's see, 90-gallon trash containers. Several people said that they hate them. Basically, the 90-gallon bins are being pulled in people's yards for parties and stuff and never put back out, so they're not being picked up, and they think that we can do better to communicate. And also, a lot of people have large trash items and they don't know what to do with large trash items. People are mad about electric scooters being on the sidewalk, and that's it. It's all communicated via email. I try to reach out to the appropriate city people to see if I can get answers.
I would just say that I know Luca Palco.
Yeah.
I don't know if you've tried to reach out to him. He's been pretty responsive. He's with Columbia Gas. He's the public affairs manager. So he had. No, this is a young guy. He came to the commission several years ago when they were talking about another project, and he was pretty responsive. We can always invite him to come to the commission if we, I mean, I think by the time he would get here, the project might be over.
Right.
But if I can re-forward his email from earlier this year when he reached out to the commission about this project, specifically at Hudson and Summit.
Yeah, I thought he'd been sending things to the community, because I've received.
Yeah, I think he did. I mean, this one, I just happened to remember his name, so I quickly searched my email and found it, but it was from January. So, I mean, they reached out a long time ago about the project, and at that point, they didn't have the schedule solidified. Tom, district concerns?
Mentioned a lot of them. As far as the crosswalks in front of the high school, which is now the Dominion Middle School, I would say Seth and I have been asking for those crosswalks going all the way back to the East High Schools over there. We've never heard anything back from the city. So, and this goes back to the plan of the crosswalks that I submitted to the committees a long time ago, some 37 crosswalks that should be throughout the district, and I don't see the conversion, except the ones on Lane Avenue that Ohio State put in. So it's, something that needs to be a bigger address. As far as the hookah bar, what's happening at the hookah bar is the same old. As we clean up what goes on at Jack's Pub, the clientele that was up there now needs to go find another venue to be at. And they almost always go down to the hookah bar, because it's open at 4 a.m. It's not just that hookah bar. Sometimes they wrap around a bit at the Casablanca, not the Casablanca, what's the one that's at the Sport Park?
That's.
They've complained a few times saying, I don't know where the
Casablanca is.
But the interesting dynamic about the Casablanca, and you should know this, the update on this, Katie, is the Casablanca building is owned by Lido's. Okay, so, and Lido's last year promised they were going to shut down the Casablanca and do their lease and bring in somebody else, but they didn't do that. So what you're looking at, when you're looking at Casablanca ownership and the manager that doesn't really care, he likes the clientele, it really comes back to the owner of Lido's. So when you pursue that, whether it be through the city or yourself, keep that in mind. It's really Lido's ownership, and it's their responsibility to make sure their client and their clientele behaves correctly. So also looking again at that area again late at night, and see what I can do to report that faster. But I know once we clean that up, I almost guarantee you it's going to go over the Suzy Q. And then when they clean up Suzy Q, they're going to go back to somewhere else in the area. It's an issue citywide of when we close down bars in one area, it becomes a problem in the other. Only big concern I have at the moment are the ones that Katie has put out. We have a lot of construction going on all over right now. I don't know if the rest of the district has this, but I don't know why all the construction starts in late September, early October, just before winter comes. I mean, you would think they'd be on it in the spring and working all summer long, so it wouldn't interfere with traffic as students come in. I have noticed also the marks suddenly go up. They came out Sunday and marked up all parts of Old North Columbus for cell towers, and we still haven't heard back from somebody yet. Where all these cell towers are planned to be put at? I think it's about time, as commissioners, we should be aware where every one of these cell towers are, and we get that information out to the community, so they know it's going to be happening on their block at some point, instead of just finding out about it too late. Some of the places where they put them, they put them right in the middle of a handicap. Go figure it out. How do they get rid of the city? Stick it right in the middle of the handicap. So, but that's just, as I recall, cell towers are being put in at the state level, not at the city level. But it would still help us if the city could pursue getting a map from the state where everywhere the university district, these towers are going to go in, and what streets are going to be torn up when. I mean, it would help for our paving program. We pave the street, and these cell towers come in and they tear up our street again. It would be nice to know that stuff. Columbia Gas is just going to be a nightmare until it's done, but just the way it was in the rest of the city.
Thanks, Tom. Ms. Ballmer?
Yeah, I've become aware, because of my street, of an issue that exists all along the dead edge streets between Doddridge and Lane. The city is not maintaining the pruning of the trees at the dead end, and those trees have lines growing up them which get on the electric lines, but the lower lines are the cell phone lines, and you have no idea. There are vines that are probably inch to an inch and a half thick hanging on them, and I got sent around from the electric department, and I called the Breeze line, I called AT&T. Bottom line is, they all contend that it's the city's responsibility to maintain the public right-of-way, the vegetation on the public right-of-way. What Breeze Line did at my house today was they installed a new line through the trees. So that didn't solve anything. But I just want to make you folks aware of that, so if you have a situation like that, and what the woman who is amazingly helpful at the city told me is that the city has not been as diligent as they had been years ago in, I think they're dealing on a complaint-driven system now rather than just going out and maintaining the vegetation.
The reason the city doesn't do that, about 5-6 years ago, city council very quietly passed through and didn't get community input that all alleys and all streets now to the center of the street are no longer the city's responsibility, it's the property owner's responsibility. So those vines and any sort of shrubs grow where you don't like them, the city could technically come out and just say to you, well, it's your responsibility to get them off there. Because of the way they rewrote the laws without communicating that to everyone. The only reason I know that, I took the city to court when that first came out, because I got nailed for vines on those cable lines. And the city said, we just passed a law last week, Tom, you're responsible for that. I said, how am I gonna go up there in the electric lines and take this stuff out?
Right, but we're talking apples and oranges, because at the dead end of the streets, those streets dead end in Tuttle Park, so that's Parks and Rec also.
Well, yes, if it's part of the
Any other, I'm sorry, but let's refrain from this, but I just wanna say, I hear that, and I'm gonna ask Swid if she wouldn't mind checking up on the validity of any of those claims about whose responsibility it is to trim away.
Yes, and if that was submitted as a 311, if you would, please forward that to me, because you're correct, the complaint driven is our 311, it's not documented there, it sort of doesn't exist as something the city can act on, so please feel free to send those to me when you submit them, especially if you're not getting a straight answer or action.
Thank you. Did you, okay, we're good, is that?
Yeah, the CBS has had a lot of push out, people just loading up. Someone was running down with a cart on my street with pop. It's ridiculous. A lot of it's plasma center related, which at one time we took them down 2 owners ago downtown, and they were assigned where they always have security plus special duty cops. So we may have to revisit that, because I did talk to this allied security guy who was in the alley on the way here. I talked to him briefly, and they do carry guns, which is good. Just maybe you could try to keep an eye on CBS a little better. People just leaving there, going over and terrorizing. So anyone who goes in there, be careful, because it's sort of a dangerous situation.
David? I'm good.
I mentioned a couple times in the block of Hunter Avenue, close to King Avenue, the neighbors have been terrorized by a particularly unruly house full of renters. That's solved now because they left, but I promised them that I would make a public thank you to Rochelle and to Swid for the work that they did in cooperation with them. And especially since the contacts you made with Marker, the owner of the property, the neighbors feel like opened up lines of communication that'll be useful in the future. And let me just say that in terms of the neighborhood association trying to open up those lines, it didn't work. So kudos to the 2 of you. Thank you.
Demetrius?
Honestly, I got lost in hearing that. It lost me in trading thought, but I would say my concern, of course, is drag racing. I noticed that on 5th and Summit, there's a hookah bar right at that corner, and they use the Key Place parking lot that's right next to the pizza place, and that's usually their hangout area where they do a lot of drag racing and everything like that. So I don't know if they came down to which areas they actually use, but I know that that's definitely a big hangout spot that they use if we're ever trying to track that down. So Other than that, that's my only thing.
Kevin?
I just have two things on the aggressive panhandling. That gentleman was out in the streets again 2 days ago, so
Just back at it.
yeah, may need to be recurring policing there.
I'm just gonna keep 311
Yeah, yeah. And then the other was about the Glen Echo Ravine Park. You know, I think the latest issue was there was a car that was driven down there overnight and parked in the ravine, and there's been fire pits put up and equipment. And I don't know if it's homeless people's equipment or not, but it's there, and it's not really an issue. But there have been issues where there's been excessive trash. So it's a Parks and Recs issue. I don't know what you can do as far as lighting or just deterrence, just because it's such a closed off and tucked away park. But at night it just becomes an area for issues. So
Was the car towed out or did somebody drive it out?
I don't know.
I just saw the-
Police were there.
So the owner came down and was shocked to find that the car was down in there. So I don't know if it's a stolen car or if they were going there, shocked that's where they went. But I just read that before the meeting started.
Yeah, because they apparently drove right over the barriers at the top of it. Drove all the way down.
It's amazing they got as far as they did.
Michael? Okay. Thank you for sharing all those district concerns. Next, treasurer's report.
There's really nothing to report. All the paperwork was given to get the reimbursement back. That's not speaking. There's nothing for this year. Joey Carter's working on it. Hopefully forthcoming.
Really need that too, for box back. My favorite money.
That's my.
Approval of minutes.
So moved.
Second.
I think we have 2 months.
Do we need to do, David, can we do a motion for both months? Okay. So, Tom, would you like to specify what your motion is for?
With just 2 months, you can't do 2 months at the same time.
No, we can, but could you just
I would like to make
specify?
a motion that we approve the minutes of the last 2 months.
Second. Okay, do
Which 2 months would this be?
roll call vote?
I have to do roll call.
Yeah.
Okay.
Or technically. I get it.
Give me just one.
You're gonna do this?
In the meantime, I can't help all night. Michael, you're looking just like George Carlin.
Oh, thank you.
I don't know, is that just an observation? Compliment? Is it a?
Hey, he was a fine looking guy.
Yes. Very young George Carlin.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
Yes.
Not the dead George Carlin.
Yeah. Like he looks now.
Approval of July and August 2023 minutes voting. Jillian Dyer. Yes. Eric Reese.
Yes.
Jeremy Davis.
Yes.
Gallagher is not in attendance. Justin Garland is not in attendance. Seth Golding.
Yes.
Ms. Qualigrado.
Yes.
David Hagley. Sadie Jenkins is not in attendance. Michael Kellmeyer.
Yes.
Katie McDevitt is a yes. Benjamin McKinley is not in attendance. Demetrius Moore Saunders.
Yes.
Kevin Pangrease.
Yes.
Lynn Juan Sellers is not in attendance. Tim Silva.
Yes.
Story Yamasara is not in attendance. Steve Waldron.
Yes.
Tom Wildman. Ryan Williams.
Yes.
Motion unanimously passes.
Thank you. So you can all report to her when she comes back that I did an amazing job again. Or you can say I let things run rampant, whichever you choose.
Trying to make me a lame duck.
You left the room, that's what happened. But adjournment, do I have a motion to adjourn?
I motion to adjourn.
Katie, a second? All in favor?
There.
Aye, thank you. Thanks for sticking with us, Lantern, for journal class. I,